Are you ready to break free from the doubts and limits holding you back? Welcome to Embrace Your Value, where therapy meets coaching to help you unlock your true worth and take control of your life.
Hi, I'm Kristen, a trauma therapist dedicated to helping you heal, break old patterns, and reclaim your power.
And I'm Jen, your support coach, here to show you how to set fierce boundaries, embrace self-compassion, and step boldly into the life you deserve.
So, whether you're stuck in self doubt or feeling lost, know this: your value isn't up for negotiation. It's time to own it.
Every week, we tackle real issues that challenge, inspire, and empower you to live with purpose and confidence.
So, grab your favorite drink, take a deep breath, and let's get started.
Because you're not here to play small. It's time to embrace your value. Hey, welcome back to the podcast. We are so excited that you are back for another episode, and we have a very special one for you today. We want to talk about imposter syndrome. This might not be something that you've heard. I know it's very much something that we talk about a lot in the coaching realm, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs kind of feel this way. But even if you're not an entrepreneur, you might stick around and listen to it because you might find that you have some of these tendencies and find some ways to deal with it. So, what we mean by imposter syndrome is the feeling that you're a fraud despite the evidence of your success. And many high achievers face this internal struggle because believing they don't deserve their accomplishments or fearing that they'll be found out is just so scary for them. And we're going to explore why imposter syndrome happens, its impact, and strategies to overcome it, empowering you guys to step into your confidence and own your value. So let's get started. Kristen, do you want to start us off and tell us what imposter syndrome is?
Got it. I'll expand a little bit on the thought process behind imposter syndrome. So, the definition that I have found is it's this persistent belief that you're not as competent or capable as others perceive you to be. And so, the psychological impact on people for this happens a lot with high achievers or those C-suite people is the psychological impact is anxiety, self-doubt, and then taking that to the next level is that perfectionism that we've talked about before, sort of that all or nothing, either I accomplish every single thing that I've set out to accomplish, or I've literally done nothing at all, or then I just shut down and I do nothing. So, and I would say that there are some common misconceptions, things like this only happens to people early in their career. And I would say that is absolutely false, in my opinion. Most of the people that I see that feel like they have imposter syndrome are well into their career, well into their experience. They haven't even shifted careers. So, like, I shifted careers, midlife and did sales for so many years. And then I went back to school and I started being a therapist. And I mean, there's a little bit of unsurety maybe around like starting a new thing, but uh, there's, I knew that there was competence there and that I was going to be able to push forward and push through whatever it was. So I think that's the difference, right? Is that you feel like you can't ever be the way people perceive you to be. And then therefore you feel like an imposter, like you're a different version of yourself than people see you as.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to point out that it doesn't have to even be a work related thing. Somebody could say to you, you're so good at XYZ, and you may not feel that way. So you may not want to take that compliment. That could make you feel like an imposter. So let's talk a little bit about why we feel like imposters and where that comes from. And a lot of times that comes from societal or cultural pressures. And especially us women or minorities or any underrepresented groups, we tend to take the burden of all of that on. And partially, I think that is because we have been trained, at least for women, that's the group I can speak on. We have been trained to be humble, so we're not supposed to take compliments. We have been raised as, and we're starting to come away from that, but there's still some of that in our society. Excuse me. And there is a little bit of, we can't do it quite as well as a man can. And so trying to move away from that and really get through it. Like, I don't feel like I don't deal with that with my husband. He doesn't feel like he does certain things better and I do certain things better. We're pretty equal opportunity as far as that goes. He can help wash the dishes and do the laundry, and I can help, shovel snow. So, there are some things there. I think that's really good. And then another reason that we feel like imposters, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, is the whole feeling of perfectionism and having to be perfect. And really, the thing that we want to strive for is progress. I always say progress over perfection. If you're making progress, then you're doing the things you need to be doing. If you're perfect, you're not learning anymore because you're there, right? And if you're not learning, then I feel like we go stagnant. And so I always say progress, progress, progress. We're not looking for perfection. So there's something around that. And then, the other thing is that anything that triggers your self doubt, anything that makes you think, oh my gosh, I'm not doing this right. Oh my gosh, that's your self doubt. And that will definitely make you feel like an imposter.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you're saying. I think it is, this internalized perfectionism, societal pressures, comparisons. This is how imposter syndrome manifests. And I would say, being a trauma therapist, I'm going to say it generally comes out of some sort of so a lot of times it's maybe you weren't very good at something as a kid, maybe expectations were too high in your household or were expressed in a way where they were threatening. So I would say that can lead to things like a fear of failure, having to prove to somebody, your boss, your parents, your spouse, like you were talking about, Jen, like you guys are equal opportunity, but that's not always true. And this happens with a lot of men, right? They want to prove to their wives that they can take care of them. And, that's another societal trickle down thing. But I think a lot of those things typically come from a lack of support or understanding from parents or caregivers as a young person that mistakes can be made, right? That nobody's perfect, that progress is really the important thing, as you said, Jen. So I think that's where that comes from. But I think the other thing that people do is they kind of say, well, I didn't really do it. I was lucky. I lucked into it. I hear that one all the time, right? I just lucked into it. Okay, well, you had to put yourself in a position to luck into it. So at the very least, you've got that, right? So maybe you were in the right place at the right time, but you put yourself in that place, maybe not expecting that you were going to then in turn have some accomplishment. But I do believe it to a certain extent, but I also believe that we make our own judgments. I mean, we have free will. We can make our own decisions and we can choose to put ourselves in positions so that we can have accomplishments and we can progress in life, or we can say, I'm going to dismiss that as lucky. And then the other way I think that imposter syndrome manifests is we will avoid challenges at times out of fear of being so that's where sometimes these things can really snowball. No joke, right? Snowing here. Those things can snowball. I'm not going to do the thing, or I'm not going to accept the job, or I'm not going to do the project, because then they'll find out what an imposter I am. They'll find out that I really can't do this thing. I think that there is definitely a cost to that, and a cost to imposter syndrome. So, Jen, can you speak a little bit about that one?
Yeah, and you kind of led right into that with, avoiding challenges. Because I think one of the things that happens to people is when they get stuck in imposter syndrome, which again is a little bit like freeze syndrome, they stop doing anything, so they kind of freeze, but then they don't take risks. They don't pursue opportunities. They don't fully enjoy their achievements because they're so scared all the time. They're scared that they're going to be exposed. And so that's definitely a cost because they miss out. They miss out on a lot of things. And then it could also lead to burnout. Trying to hold a facade for long term and not living authentically as who you are can cause you to burn out really quickly. Imposter syndrome is not allowing you to live in your full authenticity. You're not being who you are because you're assuming that you're somebody else. And so that really does a number on your stress levels. It's going to do a number on your mental health. It's going to cost you big time because you are not living the life you're supposed to be living. You're missing all of these things. And I'm a very big person who believes that we are here for a purpose. And if we aren't living our purpose, we're missing out. Something's not right, and we're not living to our full, like I said, our full authenticity. And I think that's a huge thing that I'm not saying I've never done it, because I have. I've had those imposter syndromes and those fears and not live in my full authentic life. But once you start living that life, it's amazing what changes for you because you're following your purpose. You're doing those things you're supposed to be doing. So I think that's the ultimate cost, is that you're not living the life you're supposed to be living. And I think to me, that's one of those things that I go, oh, that breaks my heart, because I always want people to be living the life they're supposed to be living. So, what are some good strategies to overcome imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I think what I generally do with people is we need to just recognize it, right? So I like to say in session, let's just call it what it is, right? That way we're not dancing around, is this or is this that, or can it be perceived as this? Let's just recognize it. Let's identify it when it arises and label the feeling, because when we label things, that we can then in turn start dealing with them, right? Because when something's just rolling around in your head, then it's a lot harder to put your finger on it and say, okay, this is something that I need to work on. So being able to sort of externalize the thoughts and emotions, I think, is the best way to sort of start identifying what's going on with you. And then once we identify the things that you feel imposter syndrome about, which could be work, but as you said, like could also be in a relationship or just as a person in general, I think that we need to work on reframing your thoughts. So I'm a big fan of replacing negative self-talk with positive, affirming, evidence-based truths. So this is really one of the basic concepts of like cognitive behavioral therapy. It's like the way we think affects how we act, right? So if we can change those thoughts, if we can change those emotions, that will in turn change how we act. It will change how we see the world. So reframing those thoughts. Do we all have negative thoughts? Absolutely. I have mine, you have yours, all the listeners have theirs. So it's not that we'll never have them. It's saying they exist, and I am now going to reframe them and make them positive, and I will find evidence for why they are positive, because we're really good at finding evidence to the contrary of whatever our thought is, our positive thought will be. We find a lot of evidence about why things are not true, and we find very little evidence about why positive things are true. So that's something that I think is really important. Create a success journal or any of the other techniques. Jen had a sticker chart, it's whatever works for you. It's something that's trackable, that is positive for you. Also, we want to normalize the experience, right? We're going to normalize that these thoughts happen. And I'm here to tell you, it's not just you. I definitely have several people that come in and think, okay, well, I don't deserve this, or this isn't true, or people think I'm this and I'm really not. No, it's normal. We've all been through times like that. And so it's not like you have something that is completely off the wall. So those are some of the ways. I also am a big believer in embracing failure as growth. So just shifting your mindset to see setbacks as learning opportunities and not as evidence of inadequacy. So these things all sort of web together, right? Is if we can start changing our thoughts and we can start seeing things as more positive, then we're going to see less inadequacy in our lives and we're going to see more evidence of things that are true, that we are doing and that we can do and that we will do. So, Jen, what are some ways that people could seek support or continue to work on this?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's lots of ways you can do that. You can hire a therapist. You can hire a coach. Either of those things are good. There are also supportive community groups that you could join. I know there are like different Facebook groups out there that you could go and join and find people that are like-minded, that want to work on it. We talk a lot in here about accountability, partially because I'm an accountability coach. I mean, that's one of the main things I focus on. And I bring it into all of my coaching. But you could find somebody else who wants to work on overcoming their imposter syndrome, and you guys could do it together. You can do some research. You can take notes off of this whole show and start with the steps that Kristen started talking about, and start by recognizing it. And you guys can each celebrate with each other. Like, there are just so many ways you can do it. We work on this a lot in my group coaching. It's definitely there. I don't always give the titles. Like, I don't always tell people this is what we're working on, because they don't necessarily need to know that. They just need to work on the behavior and changing the mindset, and that kind of helps with that. Do you have any other thoughts on that, Kristen?
No, I feel like we covered everything we needed to cover, but we would love to hear, obviously, from the listeners. As always, we want to make sure that you're getting the support that you need from us. If you have any questions or any thoughts, this is a great thing to get some feedback around. I think that this is probably not talked about enough in our society. I don't know about other cultures, but in our society, I think that we don't really talk about it because we teach people to not speak about things like accomplishments or not accomplishing things. So I think this is something that, like you were saying, just finding a support group, finding a therapist, finding a coach that can really help. And that's what we do here, right? We are coaches, we're therapists, and we're here to help people. So we would love to hear some more feedback specifically about this one. I'm interested just to kind of see what the public at large says about it. But other than that, I think we covered everything, Jen.
And if you have specific things, like if you're struggling with something specific, bring that to us. We don't mind helping you work on something. We don't mind helping you in those ways. So bring those to us, and we would love to help you through it. We would love to get your feedback. If you will hit the subscribe button wherever you're watching this or listening to it, we would love that as well. You'll also get notifications when we release a new episode. So that's always kind of nice. And if you know someone who's struggling with imposter syndrome or other mindset issues, share this podcast. Don't keep this a secret, because if you keep it a secret, then we're not helping as many people as we could. And the whole goal is to help as many people as we can. So definitely share us out there. Let us do that. And we can't wait to see you next week.
Thanks for joining. Thank you for being here with us today.
If today's episode hit home, don't just keep it to yourself. Subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it, because everyone deserves to know their worth.
Next week, we're diving even deeper with more insights and tools to help you break free from limitations and live authentically.
Until then, keep raising your standards, owning your worth, and embracing your value.